Air for Arts is a nonprofit organization dedicated to creatives, artists, and innovators. We strive to provide a platform that supports educational, inspirational, and supportive programs for our community to enjoy and be inspired by. Through our digital platform and community events, we help emerging creatives and seasoned innovators share the fruits of their efforts. Join us as we take you on an inspirational journey through the arts to spark your imagination.
My name is David Nethery, and I'm president of Air for Arts. Storytime is a new offering for this year, focusing on the storytelling tradition, both oral and written. And for this year, we have selected a series of children's books written by Nancy Churnin, an award-winning author, and we feature Nancy discussing one book each month. Nancy's books all deal with real historical figures, some of whom we know and some of whom we don't. And while technically children's books, they're delightfully educational and informative, and they appeal to children of all ages. Susan Morrow is the executive director of Air for Arts, and she has the pleasure of introducing not only Nancy, but our special guest today as well. Susan.
Thank you, David. My delightful pleasure to introduce Nancy and her special guest, Denise Lee, who's an award-winning Dallas-based actress, singer, who's performed in all genres of entertainment for the past 4 decades. She's the founder and executive producer of the Denise Lee On-Stage Cabaret series and the Dallas Cabaret Festival, which is entering its 6th year. Lee has recently added playwright to her list of accomplishments. Her first play, Funny, You Don't Act Like a Negro, had its world premiere right here at the historic Theater 3 in February 2020. In addition to her career as an artist, Denise Lee established community conversation through her Visions for Change initiative. For 5 years, these monthly gatherings have brought people together for respectful, open, honest dialogue in order to heal racial and community tension. For these efforts, she has received several awards, including the 2019 Cathedral of Hope's Hero of Hope Award. Today, she and Nancy will be discussing Nancy's book, For Spacious Skies, about the poem that Kathrnie Lee Bates wrote that led to America the Beautiful. And my understanding, the more I have listened to Nancy and to Denise, I sense there is quite a story about kindred spirits. It's our honor to present now Nancy and Denise.
Thank you, David and Susan. It's so thrilling to be here. I am so excited to share For Spacious Skies, and I could not be more thrilled by my special guest, our special guest today, the amazing Denise Lee. I write books that are designed to tell kids true stories about people that I hope will inspire them. People who will inspire them to make the world a better place. Very few kids know the story about who wrote America the Beautiful, one of our most famous patriotic songs. And they don't know why she wrote it. They don't know it was because Kathrnie Lee Bates was a child of the Civil War. She saw the country pulled apart, and she wanted to use her art, poetry, to bring the country together. So she grew up during the Civil War. She saw all the problems in the country, how people were so terribly divided, one against another, how much inequality and injustice there was in the world. And she wrote a poem that asks us to crown our good with brotherhood. Very important to bring us together and to remind us we're one American family from sea to shining sea. Well, when I found out that Denise Lee was available and was happy to come and join me in conversation. I couldn't have been more thrilled. As I said, I'm always hoping that these books will inspire kids to be like the people that I'm writing about. And in this case, to try and make America more beautiful by making it more just, more fair, more inclusive. And what's extraordinary about Denise is that I cannot think of anyone who channels Kathrnie Lee Bates more than Denise does. So let's think about who Kathrnie Lee Bates was and who Denise is. Kathrnie Lee Bates was an artist. She was a poet. Her poem was set to music. She's actually in the Songwriters Hall of Fame for that. But her goal was activism, right? She wanted to make the world, the country, a better place. She helped found a settlement house for the poor. She cared about justice. And Denise is an artist. She is an actress. She is a singer. She's a phenomenal talent, but who also cares very deeply about making our community, this country, and the world a better place. Denise has started some incredible initiatives that she's going to talk to us about, including a program about making conversations between people, which is designed change the perception, which is designed to bring people together, was exactly Kathrnie Lee Bates's dream. A lot of the art she chooses to do, whether it's a project, whether it's an already existing show like Lady Day at Emerson's Bar and Grill about Billie Holiday, who was a great artist and social activist as well, or her own original cabaret show, which she did recently, Pressure Makes Diamonds. She cares so much about getting people to talk to each other, see each other, respect each other, and build empathy. Denise, thank you so much for joining me. And thank you for talking to me about For Spacious Skies. I know you have the book yourself. And I'm just wondering what your impression was. Did you see that connection between Kathrnie Lee Bates and yourself?
Well, first, thank you so much for that incredible introduction. And I'm just wondering if possibly you're available for PR work, because
I'll boost you anytime, Denise.
But I am, it's hard for me to say that I see that, because I have so much respect for her and her work, and she's almost iconic in my point, if that makes sense. But I think one of the differences, she was kind of and had an activist mind before she really began to write. And I think I started as the artist who became the activist. And I just don't know that I would have been prepared to be an activist had I started that way, if that makes sense.
Right, but you got to the same place.
Absolutely.
You may have been coming from different directions, but you really pretty much got to the same place.
Absolutely.
Now, in your recent cabaret show, Pressure Makes Diamonds, you did that in March, is that right? In Oklahoma?
Correct.
Tell us a little bit about that and why you included your personal rendition of America the Beautiful, the song for which Kathrnie Lee Bates is best known.
Actually, I sing that song quite a bit. It's been, so when I got this opportunity, there was no way I could pass it up. I am drawn to that song because, as divided as we are, that song speaks for all Americans. So when I got the opportunity to do my show in Oklahoma at Lyric Theater of Oklahoma, Michael Barron was gracious enough to call me and say, "I'd love for you to come down and help us open our season." And we couldn't decide on what we wanted to do. And he introduced me to the incredible Monique Machette, who came down from Maryland to direct. And I told them that it would happen during my birthday. And so Monique and I came up with the idea to center the cabaret show around my birthday, which was my 60th. And that's how we came up with the title.
When's your birthday, Denise?
It was March 31st. Thank you.
All right. Happy belated
stepping
birthday,
into
Denise
60.
Lee.
So what we did was we talked long and hard about how we would craft the show. And I thought it was important. And so did Michael. He said, if you want to address the issues of the day, we would appreciate that. We want that here in Oklahoma. And it was important to me in crafting the show about my life to be able to add part of my experience, some of the darker sides of my experience with racism and what's been going on in America. So we had a section that we talked about George Floyd's murder and talked about the things that have been happening in our communities and how we all have to be able to work together to do better. So we started the segment out with a verse from Lift Every Voice and Sing, the Negro National Anthem by James Weldon Johnston, which is very similar kind of to Kathrnie Lee Bates. It started as a poem and then became, and was set to music, composed by his brother. But then I ended the segment with a verse of from America the Beautiful, because I wanted to say that even though we are isolated right now in our, I don't know what word we would use, you know, as a person of color feeling isolated in this community, it is going to take all of us to come together. And so the songs, I think, represent that.
Oh, that's lovely. You know, it's so interesting to me because she was a child of the Civil War. The country was literally torn apart by war, and you had, you know, brother against brother, sister against sister. Just, I mean, there were states that were cut down the middle. But, you know, when you think about it, I mean, today, all those divisions, I mean, I've been reading some people talk about how the Civil War never really ended. It just changed form. It's being fought on a different platform. A lot of those divisions, which maybe some of us naively might have imagined had faded away, were under the surface and just waiting for a different battlefield, which turned out to be politics or social media. I mean, what are your thoughts there? And I guess I'm making that parallel too, because again, as I said, I keep seeing Kathrnie Lee Bates in you. She's seeing this great division and wanting to bring people together. And I see that in you, Denise.
I appreciate that. And I think part of the issue is we continue over the years. Yeah, I tend to agree with what you said. I think part of the issue is we tend to keep asking the same questions and getting the same results, just generation to generation. And there are policies on the books that, one, should be gone, but they're also, it's easy for people not to realize some of the discrimination that happens in communities of color because the policies that are on the books don't normally affect them. They, you know, we're a lot of times the main victims of redlining are people of color. When they segregate communities by divisions in real estate, those things happen to people of color. So often a lot of my friends were like, I had no idea so many of these things were still happening because media doesn't cover it. And with so many media outlets now, people don't report news, they have to get ratings. And so good news doesn't bring about ratings. You know, so you have to almost go to the worst of what's happening in communities and pull those things out. Until recently, I think we're at a point in our society right now that this last year has been so eye-opening for so many people that it has forced conversation. You know, we've been doing this, and thank you for talking about my organization. We started out as Change the Perception and operated under community conversations under that for 4 years. And then at the end of last year, 2020, we became a nonprofit and renamed ourselves Visions for Change, because we had grown so much past the mission of what Change the Perception was. Change the Perception started out as an organization that wanted to change the perception of men of color in media, because I believe there's a direct correlation between the way men of color are treated by law enforcement and society based on what they've seen on television for so long. You know, for years there were no African-American men of color in lead roles in drama series, which would give people the opportunity to see them as fathers, to see them as just average, everyday businessmen, as opposed to thugs or musicians or athletes. And there was no way to see that. So if all you saw was, criminals or superstars, you didn't get to see real people. And that gave you a perception of what these people were, of what men of color were. And I wanted to change that. But after we started Community Conversation, which absolutely came about as a fluke, it came about after the police shootings in 2016. And we were so ugly and nasty to each other on social media. I mean, friends and family, we weren't talking to each other anymore. And I just got tired of politicians showing up for photo ops. I got tired of preachers preaching at us and telling us the Lord was going to take care of it. I got tired of, just authors of, people sitting on panels and telling how we should live our life, but then going back to their very wealthy life and not paying any attention to the common person. And I went on social media and said, we need to talk to each other. And, as I told you at the beginning of this, I think my artistry prepared me for this job in activism, because I'm completely convinced that had I not been involved in the arts and have connection with so many people, that I might not have been able to accomplish what I did on that first night, which all I did was went on social media and word of mouth spread that we were going to come together. I didn't even have a location. And I can tell you, I tagged almost every theater and church in this community, and only one responded. And that was the Dallas Children's Theater. And I'll be forever grateful to Robin Flatt for that. But they opened their building and 200 people showed up. And we had people there from street sweepers to Ron Kirk, the mayor, and Matrice Kirk. And so we had everybody. And when they walked in that room, I let them know that they weren't the city council person or the police officer or the mayor. They were Bob and Joe. And, I made a couple of politicians take off their name tags, and that's not what you're here for. And we came together, we broke into groups, and we talked for 3.5 hours. People talked, and we laid out the rules and said, you have to be respectful. But this is the only way we're going to learn about each other, is to talk to each other. Not always agree, but be able to at least hear my story, because your path is different from my path. And if you don't know any part of my journey, then you think I have to adhere to what your path is. We have to understand that we may not always we may see the same situation, but we're not going to face it the same way because of our past experiences. And the only way to be able to come together is to learn how to talk to each other. That was probably a very long answer to your very
No, that's great. That's so true, because so much of today's media is about sound bites and saying something that's very sharp, or some kind of a put down, and you're doing the antithesis of that. I did want to ask you, just to follow up on that, if you could tell us your website so people can look that up. And also, you mentioned the Dallas Children's Theater. You have an ongoing relationship with them, isn't that right? As a matter of fact, you're leading their Young Ambassadors program. So again, this is as my book hopes to energize the young activists and artists of tomorrow. That's what you're doing with the Children's Theater as well, aren't you?
It's actually come full circle. Robin Flatt and Bart McKeon, who used to work for the Dallas Children's Theater, when I sent out all of those, say we need a place to meet, what was crazy was I hadn't included the Children's Theater on that list. Bart just saw my announcement and sent me a message and said, I bet Robin would open her doors. And sure enough, she did. And when we got there that night, graciously said we could use that space for as long as we need to. So for the last 5 years now, we have met once a month at the Dallas Children's Theater, of course, until last year when we started meeting virtually. But they have allowed us to meet in that space because Robin has told me that she believed in the power of conversation and what we were doing. So much of what Visions for Change has become is due to their graciousness. But I also, this last year, in everything that people are doing in an attempt to bring communities together. I believe in the Children's Theater's mission. I've worked with them over the past 20 some odd years, and really believe in the work that they do for young people. Change the Perception initially started out, well, my idea for it was to work with young people because I didn't want to deal with adults. I just didn't. And I had no patience. And I'm a person of faith. So I believe God sat back and patiently waited until I was through trying to fix it myself until I got done. He said, well, whenever you're ready, let me know. I got a plan. So I kept going, no, it's going to be great. We're going to work with kids. And none of that ever manifested. And then we started having community conversation. So to come full circle, Robin has started, and the Children's Theater started a social justice initiative, which they had 3 beautiful plays written by Idris Goodwin, who writes plays for young audiences. And they're 6 minutes in length, and we co-produce those. They're free on the Dallas Children's Theater's website. And we encouraged organizations to watch them in groups and have conversations within their organizations. And then we've already done one with Water Gun Song. And we formed a group of young people, which we call our youth ambassadors. And this program is still developing, but we have about 15 young people ranging from ages 8 to like 17, who we watch the play. They're on screen with me, and then I facilitate, and we have a conversation about what they see and what they know. And I think it's so important to hear from them, because so often we don't. We as adults get involved in the politics of it all, get involved, and we talk with them, and we forget we're leaving this world for them, and we should be setting an example. So we have started with this youth ambassadors group, and we're going to get together with them and do activities periodically, and hopefully as they grow and bond together, they'll be able to go out to different organizations and help other young people learn how to talk to each other. So, that's, so I am now there, and I giggle at this because I'm a social justice strategist, which I'm very proud of that. But that's what I do for the Dallas Children's Theater right now. And I'm helping them by these organizations who have come to them that want to have these conversations but don't know how to facilitate. I actually facilitate their conversations for them.
That is so fabulous. And I think, as I'm saying, Kathrnie Lee Bates, she would have loved what you were doing, because that is what she tried to do. And the other thing that's interesting is about how art and activism go hand in hand. People think of those as 2 separate things, but actually just even our choice, your art, what you do with your art can make a statement. I mean, one of the things you were talking about when we started was changing the perception, because if you present art that presents certain stereotypes, that casts, makes a monolithic statement about certain groups and says they can only be seen in a certain way, then that's what the public does indeed see. So you need to, as an artist, the choice you make in simply the art you put on will affect people's perceptions, as you said. And then, but how even more potent when you're actually an activist, in addition to being an artist, and you're going into the community as she did, and as you do. And one thing I also just wanted to ask you about was, for instance, I know you did your own show. And there's so many things I want to ask you to do. So it's like they're all complex. I have to do one at a time. Okay, I'm saying, Nancy, one question at a time. Don't give her 6 questions at a time. So let's go back to your cabaret show.
Okay.
Incredible that you created that yourself. And I know you only did a little part of America the Beautiful, but being the kind of artist you are, I know you researched it. And I know that you're one of the people who's aware of how many stanzas are in that.
There are 4.
And what are your feelings about that, and your interpretation of what she was doing with the song? And by the way, do you have his favorite stanza?
Yes, I do. And if I was prepared, I would have looked it up so I could actually, as I sit here now and do it, where you can't tell it on screen, but I'm
it's
telling
in the book.
Myself. I've got it right here. Yes, it is. But I wanted to quote. Excuse me, and I will look it up.
I always say that to kids, by the way, when they're asking me questions, like they'll ask me, well, how old was thus and such when they did thus and such? And I'll say, I hope this is an open book test, because I'm going to open the book and I don't have all this memorized.
And those were, famous last words of my mother. I'd ask her a question, go look it up. Go look it up. You know, we didn't have Google. We had that Encyclopedia Britannica. So let's go look it
And
up.
your mother here, Denise, go look
I
it up.
know.
You got the book.
So I think you and I, we had talked, one of the things that I think that she talked about, one of my favorite lines in the song is in the fourth verse, which says, "Oh, beautiful for patriots' dream that sees beyond the years, thine alabaster cities gleam, undimmed by human tears." And it talks about, you know, I think what she's trying to do is put a mirror up to show us herself. Here we are prospering, you know, in so many ways. There is a group of people who are prospering. These cities are gleaming, and they're not fazed by the human tears, by the poverty and the things that they see around us. And I think that's her holding a mirror up to say, look, this is what's happening. And we, those who are prospering, have to do something about that. One of my other favorite lines was, oh, beautiful for heroes proved in liberating strife, who more than self their country loved, and mercy more than life. Because I am so sick of people putting party before country. Until we put country first, then we can't come together as people. This country was founded on the whole melting pot theory, which I heard something else recently, and I will be honest, I don't remember if it was a television show or an interview, but I thought it was a very interesting saying. Are we a melting pot or are we a salad? For instance, a melting pot may force us to lose the individuality that we bring to this country, where if you have a mixed salad, you still maintain your individualism, but you form this beautiful bowl that still allows you to see every individual piece. And I think I like that analogy better, but that's who we're supposed to be.
And I like that better too, because you think about like a salad with all these different things in it. You think of a bouquet of flowers.
Yes.
Different flowers make it more beautiful. If you go into the ocean, would you only want to see one kind of fish?
Right.
If you looked up in the sky, would you only want to see one kind of bird? When you look around us, would you only want to see, you know, one kind of tree?
Right.
I mean, we celebrate diversity in nature. And we should in each other. And that's and look at what Kathrnie Lee Bates did. I mean, she was inspired to write this poem after taking a trip across the country, and she saw the diversity of the country and the diversity of the people along the way, but she saw the beauty in the unity of it. Right?
Yes. Yeah. And that's I think artists help us to see things in a way, it helps us to see it before we have time to put up our defenses. Because if people come into a conversation to have a topic about politics, they've already put up their guard and they come with their points. But when you come to see and experience art, sometimes you let your guard down. And we can say things from a stage that people may not disagree with, may not agree with, but they can't stand up and fuss back either. They have to sit and listen to it at least until intermission. So, and it makes you think about it the same way with cartoons. And so often, you know, the whole Cartoon Network now for adults, there are things that have been said on that Stewie could say from that nobody else could get away with, but it makes you think. And so art finds a way of getting into the human psyche before you have time to fight it off. You had to listen to it. Oh, no, go ahead.
Oh, no. And that's beautiful. I mean, I didn't mean to, I'm sorry, didn't mean to interrupt. But I mean, yes, it's all about building empathy, and you walk in somebody else's shoes. And you've done this both in your original cabarets, which are so extraordinary. I mean, you've done multiple cabarets where you really shared yourself. And we were also talking earlier before the show about how you were in Oklahoma and you didn't know how it was going to go down when you were talking about George Floyd and your own personal experience, and people really seem to open your heart and hear you. And you've also done it with your choice of shows. I have to say, I was so dazzled by your portrait of Billie Holiday in Lady Day at Emerson's Bar and Grill, which you've done at a number of theaters. I know you did it at Water Tower.
I've done 3. I did it at Contemporary Theater, Dallas, and then I did Jubilee Theater.
And extraordinary. And, you know, she is someone who has not been as understood. I mean, her voice was always appreciated, but her journey was not always as understood as it should be. I mean, there's a wonderful movie out now, which really puts her journey in perspective in terms of her choice of singing Strange Fruit, how brave, how courageous that was, because she could have certainly had an easier career and an easier life if she didn't choose to sing a song that reminded people of the horror of the lynchings.
Right. Well, and as you can see, we were talking about my picture back there of Billie Holiday done by my dear friend Mark Mullinow.
Can everyone take a second to really look at that? And can you explain how he's constructed that amazing? Remember that name, Mark Mullinow. He's incredible.
Mark Mullinow is a Dallas-based artist, musician, actor, and a dear, dear friend of mine. And I had this poster from when I did Lady Day. It was given to me as a gift, and I didn't have a wall to hang it on. I didn't know how I wanted to mount it or frame it. And Mark has this beautiful way of all of his art, and I know you probably cannot see it as closely. I can't bring that closer, but this is textured. All of this is textured, and it's actually the sheet music. You can choose whatever music. And so he pulls up the sheet music and actually paints it all out by notes. So if somebody were to play across the top, it would be God Bless the Child. And he mounted that on God Bless the Child for me. Now he was so scared because he found it bubbling and he had to cut it in squares. And all he could think about was, God, let this turn out right, because if not, I have cut her picture into squares. But it has come out, it came out, boy, it's my favorite piece of art ever. But Mark does some incredible work. And this was a very important piece to me. It was because it does remind me of her struggle. And I will tell you, in you talking about the movie that's out now with Andra Day, who is just amazing. The way she is portrayed now is a direct result of us being able to tell our stories. If you look at the difference between the production with Diana Ross, which was monumental in and of itself, Lady Sings the Blues. But that and this, it tells you a side of her. It makes her human. It doesn't make her just this drug addict singer. And that is what's happening now. We are learning about history we've never been told, or history that's been fabricated, because people of color are now being able to tell their own stories, which is part of the fabric of this country. I make it purposely every year. I put, Black history is American history. And I think a wake-up call for us should have been when we saw the movie Hidden Figures. I can't tell you how mad I was. I'm like, at the time, I think I was like 56 years old. I'm like, why have I never heard of these women? These women didn't just do things for Black people. They got us into space. My God, it's American history. And because so much history, or the good parts of people of color, are hidden. I mean, with so many devices created, the street light, the clock, all of these things that were created by people of color. Do you know where I learned where most of my people of inventions were? Stevie Wonder has a song called Black Man. Mm-hmm. And I actually did, in one of our community conversations, I wrote the lyrics out and asked people if they could fill in the blanks. Because he goes through one of the lyrics, the first man to die for the flag we now hold high was a Black man. The land where we stand with a flag held in our hand was first the red man's. And he goes through this list. And at the end, he asks the children, who were these people? And they have to name them. And I wrote this all out as a quiz to see how many people actually knew these things. Crispus Attucks or Benjamin Banneker, and all of these people that had a role in creating and inventing the things that we use every day, but because they were created by people of color, and so many people who lost patents because they wouldn't be able to give them those, then again, that creates a perception. If you had known that there were, the first heart surgery was done by a Black man, you would have a whole different perception of Black men. So those are the things that we are now being able to tell, since we're getting the opportunity to tell our stories and to tell the history of this country truthfully. Now, it's going to take a while because our mindset has been we have been bombarded with all of the images and all of the things that we have heard over the years. And it may be well past my lifetime, but I think each generation has the responsibility to make progress for the next generation.
I think that's absolutely true. And I really love that you brought up all of these names, these very important names for the kids to know. It's, as a children's book author, when I think about the subjects for my books, I'm always looking for the people that the kids wouldn't know otherwise, people whose names were kind of left out of the picture for for whatever reason. There's a variety of reasons, but it is amazing, how narrow it can be, and that it's so ridiculous. For instance, on Black History Month, they tend to do the same 6 people over and over again, and those are usually their great 6 people, but really there are a lot. I mean, there are so many.
And if I hear one more Martin Luther King story, and God knows I love Dr. King, but I'm like, stop using Dr. King to put Black people in their place. Because so often I was like, we always hear the sweet, wonderful, Dr. King was such this peaceful man. Dr. King said, a riot is the voice of the unheard. That was a quote you never see people use it about Dr. King, and I've had people tell me, I'm sorry, I was losing you a little bit.
Oh, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I just think he's very much an activist in that tradition.
Absolutely. He was as hated during his time as what some of the activists of this day are, and the people who he was called the troublemaker. He and John Lewis were the troublemakers of their day. But now we have people that, I've actually had people to say to me, you know what, oh my gosh, Dr. King would be rolling over in his grave if he were to see the way people are tearing up their communities. I was like, I'm gonna need you to be quiet and not talk. And it's very frustrating. So I try to make it a point, if I'm going to use quotes by Dr. King, to use ones that aren't used in the way to try to put people in their place, if you will. When you hear the story about Malcolm X, so often Malcolm X has gotten such a bad rap until Spike Lee did in the movie. It kind of showed you him as a human. And this is my own personal conspiracy theory, but I'm convinced that when leaders try to bring people together for good, and they start making progress in bringing all people together, somehow they end up gone.
Well, it is threatening.
King, Malcolm wasn't a threat until he came back from Mecca and realized, you know what? I have brothers in Mecca that are white, that are brown, and he began to see all people. And then after that, so there's a danger in becoming an activist, but I think people who become activists for the right reasons aren't ever looking for that. Dr. King didn't set out to be an icon or an activist. He started just trying to do what was right.
Oh yeah, and I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
I'm excited by what you're saying. But the other thing I want to define about activism, which is another thing I think people very often misunderstand, is I think sometimes people think of an activist as being against something. An activist is against injustice, but the bigger picture is, I think activists are working for the pure activist is really working for the common good, and they want to bring people together. So someone like Kathrnie Lee Bates was very concerned about inequality, the fact that women didn't have a right to vote. She was a suffragette. She was worried about poverty. She helped found Denison House. She could have stayed in her ivory tower of Wellesley, where she was the chairman of the department, but she was out there getting her hands dirty, trying to help others. and even wrote a book about poverty to get people talking about that. She was a peace activist. She believed in peace. And she also gave this song as a gift to America because, again, it was her goal not to make money from the song, but to use it to bring people together. And when I'm coming back to you, Denise, is that you, I don't hear anger in your message. I mean, I do hear, maybe an anger against injustice, but the bigger picture for you is wanting to bring people together and to see us all as one family. And that's why you listen in your program. And tell me again the name of the program, because it started as Change of Perception, and now it's
the organization we became a 501c3. It's visionsforchange.org is the website.
Right.
And we host community conversations every fourth Monday.
Wonderful.
And yeah, Visions for Change is on Facebook as well. You can follow us on Facebook and on Instagram. But I mean, I'd like to think, or I'd like people to think that, yes, I'm very calm, but I curse when I turn the camera off. It gets, there are days, and and this whole thing is so important about being real and being honest. And I don't want anybody to think that, oh yeah, I've got it all figured out. I'm here, I'm your listening ear. There are days I don't want to talk about it. There are days that I don't want to hear anything about it. I don't want to have the discussions about it. I cry. I'm frustrated because it's exhausting. It is exhausting. But the bigger picture is I could spend all of my time being exhausted, or I could find a way to try to change it. And I have to stand the fight. And I've got people that I swear, I know a couple of folks that would tell you, Denise calls me at least once or twice a month to say, okay, I quit. I'm done. I don't want to play anymore. And, when we see the bigger things that are happening, when we see the bigger things that happen, I have to remind myself that my fight is here community-wise. And the ripple effect from that fight is what will change the world. My goal is not to change the world. And I tend to want to go, oh, okay, I want to fight this politician, this is not right, or I want to fight this policy. And I realize I'm not going to be able to get to them unless I start with people here. Unless we start talking to each other and form that bond here, we're never going to be a big enough group to make a difference on the global front.
And that is so true. And that's why I want to get around to where we started. And you talked about, what it means to really be a patriot and put country first. And when I think of what it means to put country first, it means, what is the country? The country is just made up of the people in the country. So what you're doing and what you're doing through your art, bringing people together, and what you're doing in your conversations, you're bringing people together. I keep coming back to that. It's not easy. Boy, I think I find that really hard to be in a room of people who are sort of angry and all heated up. And you have to be the voice of moderation and get them to talk to each other and not scream at each other and not scream at you and be respectful. It's much easier to come back with a sassy comeback and
which I do.
But I think you kind of overall resist that for the larger purpose. And to go back to what you do as an artist, I have to say, Denise, because I've seen you on the stage many times. The lights go down in a theater. You have all these people sitting together. They didn't even know each other before they sit down. It's like, I know you're someone who goes to church and all, and there may be people who have different, religious beliefs. Usually you go, you see the same people, and at least you're connected by the same basic beliefs. But in a theater, you're bringing together people of many different beliefs or no beliefs at all. And what you are doing is you are giving them a story, a feeling, a chance to empathize with someone's journey that is then knitting these very disparate people together.
Right.
And when they're clapping together for you at the end, all of a sudden, these very different people have become one. it is like a religious experience.
Well, I think music and conversation are both very unifying. One of the things that I strive to do with the cabaret series is to have people, I said, I didn't want them to follow me. I wanted them to follow the cabaret series, and hopefully my reputation as an artist helped them to know that no matter what kind of music was going to be played, they would enjoy it. It would be quality. So we have had country cabarets, we have had jazz cabarets, R&B cabarets, all types of music. And like you said, there are people who come in who probably wouldn't sit next to each other on the bus. And they come in, and I tell people all the time, oh, honey, just sit there. And I think it's because, I hope it's because I try to treat people like family. If you come to my cabaret series, and I tell folks, you're just gonna have to forgive me if you think honey and sweetie is sexist, because that's just who I am. And it's actually because I'm horrible with names. But it's like, hey baby, how you doing? Good to see you, sweetie. How you doing? And so until I can remember your name, I'm great with faces, but horrible with names. But I also use them as terms of endearment. For me, it is nothing sexist or demeaning about it. If with the people there, what I call strangers I meet at a business meeting, that absolutely not. But when you're coming to the cabaret series, I consider us family. And I've had people say, okay, I'm gonna sit you here. I want you to meet these person, talk, get to know each other. And I'll walk away. And people have no choice but to do that. And they sit down, and we've had a mixture of people that come there. The same way with the conversation. I made it a point, and I think it was a blessing that none of the churches answered my call, because I think we would have alienated an entire segment of people who, one, are lacking in faith right now, who don't believe, and that's fine. We have people of all faiths, we have people of no faith, we have people, all orientations. Everyone is welcome at Community Conversation. And I tell people that, I've had a young guy who was an agnostic that actually went, I can't remember, it was a small town south of here. And he said he just saw us online and came to a conversation. And I think he has started conversations in his community. And so people never would have listened to somebody who said, I'm an agnostic and I want to tell you how to come together. If you start that way, but if you put people in a room and let them talk to each other, they will, if and only if they have a desire to make things better. If they come to the meeting trying to be right rather than do right, there's gonna be a problem. Now, you said that it was, for me, not being able to bring people together. The way you do that is you start the organization, you set the rules, and if people don't play, you can put them out. So at the very first community conversation, I went, look, here's the deal. I understand people get passionate, so don't mistake passion for anger. I understand we all come in right now, we're all very riled up and frustrated. None of this is personal. I don't want you to make it personal. I don't want you to take it personally. I want people to be able to say exactly what they're thinking. And no matter how ridiculous you think that is, end your sentence with for me or to me. Like, that is the dumbest thing in the world to me. That is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard to me. End it with that, because the person saying it may not see it as ridiculous because of their life experience. So the rule was, if you just get so angry that you think you have to yell at somebody, take a minute and walk away, because we won't tolerate you being disrespectful to someone else. And everybody that night abided by all of those rules. We could hear voices being raised, but it was never in anger. It was like either frustration and passion and people wanting to get their points across. Not one person left.
That is so fabulous. And just to go back to art again, people understand those rules in the theater, right? They come and they sit down, and you may be portraying a character that they're going, oh my gosh, that character, I don't agree with that character's life choices or this or that, but they know they're going to sit and they're going to listen. and they're going to follow on that journey. And, and sometimes, very often, by listening and taking it in, they're surprised and they go on that journey with you.
Yeah.
The other thing
We've had people leave a couple of, not my shows, but I've been in plays where people would, walk out. And I think sometimes there is a whole thing that is like, okay, I think actually my play, we only had maybe
Your cabaret?
No, the play I wrote for Theater 3.
Really? Tell us the name of that play that you wrote.
It was called Funny, You Don't Act Like a Negro. And it was, see, and that's another whole segment we'll do. It's just, but they produced my play, and it was about this. Again, it was about conversation. It was about seeing people, hearing their stories. And so I think the play made people look at themselves, because we didn't use derogatory language. We didn't use, blatantly racist language. What it did was had conversations like so many people do in their homes, like white people, like Black people, Hispanic, have in their homes that they would never have outside of their walls or in front of other people. And we showed those conversations as innocent as the people thought they were,
right?
But the damage that it does to our children, because they were saying this in front of their kids. And it was like, what are we passing on to them? And so we did conversations after each show. But we had, I think, 2, maybe 3 people get it. And what happens is, if it hits too close to home, my brother used to say all the time, throw a rock into a pack of wolves. The only one that hollers is the one that gets hit. And so if it gets too close to home and you're not prepared to deal with it, that's when people leave. But the ones, I think, who really want to make this a better place force themselves to look at the reality of the situation and who they are, and try to understand why they think that way.
Absolutely. Denise, I could talk with you all day, as you know, because you and I do talk.
I know.
We talk, we never stop, because there's so much to say. These are such rich topics. But I want to just tell everybody out there who's listening, you do not want to walk away, because Denise has gifted us with a great treat. Remember what I told you about her artistry and how she brings people together? Well, she has agreed to sing America the Beautiful, the song written by Kathrnie Lee Bates, set to music by Samuel Ward. And it's just, I so appreciate your willingness to do that for everyone. And again, I don't think we could have a better person singing that, not only because she's a fabulous singer and she's gonna knock your socks off, but because as an artist, she really gets what she does. So it's not just a pretty song to her. No. She knows it in her heart. And then to add to that, as I said, to me, if Kathrnie Lee Bates was a singer, I think she'd sing it like Denise Lee. She wasn't a singer. She was a writer. She was a poet. But if she could sing it, she'd sing it like Denise Lee, because they are truly kindred spirits.
I thank you so much for that, Nancy. That is, so I am honored by that and humbled by it, and I really appreciate it. I think all of us, through your art as well, which you and I have talked about, and the journey that you have taken, and the art in which the way you share your books and are inspiring young people. I think all of us are just trying to do what's best with the gifts we've been given. And I think when we're trying to work for the good, nothing but good can come from it.
Oh, those are words to live by, Denise. Thank you so much. And I urge everybody to check out Denise's conversations. If you have children, check out that Young Ambassador program at Dallas Children's Theater, and kudos to Dallas Children's Theater for all the support.
May I just throw in a plug? You can find the social justice series at dct.org. DallasChildren'sTheaters.org. My website is visionsforchange.org. And then hopefully we'll get the cabaret series up and running again when we can see folks face to face. And you can find that at DeniseLeeOnStage.com.
Oh, I love that so much. And I had to tell you also that, and I think this is complimentary to what you do, is that I always try to have a project for each book. And it's always on my website, nancychurnin.com. And the project for this one is For Spacious Lines. And I'm asking kids to share in their own words ways in which we can make America more fair, more just, and thereby more beautiful, because that's where beauty comes from. It comes from kindness, justice, and inclusion. So,
well, I will pass that on to our young ambassadors. I will send them an email and direct them to your page.
oh, that would just be wonderful.
Absolutely.
And I want to thank you again, Denise, for spending time with us here today, for talking with me, because you always uplift me and give me hope. And thank you for all you do for making America a more beautiful place.
Thank you. The feeling is mutual. We'll get together and talk again.
Yes, of course. And we're all going to look forward to it. So hold on there, because Denise is going to sing, and it's just, she's going to knock your socks off. Thank you so much, Denise. And now I'll turn to, and thank you, Susan and David, for hosting us. And David, all yours.
Wow. Nancy, Denise, thank you both so very much. I hated for this to come to an end, but I'm looking forward to hearing you sing.
Thank you.
Nancy, I always enjoy hearing you talk about your books, but I especially enjoy hearing you as an interviewer. Thank you so much. And I look forward to seeing you again next month. And Denise, I look forward to hearing you very soon.
Thank you very much.
Turn it back over to you.
I echo the wow. Oh my gosh, I love both of you. Yes, fantastic, and no words. And I'm so looking forward. I'm going to make this somewhat quickly, but yet I want to just thank everyone for this superb presentation. For those of you who are watching the recorded presentation, thank you for being here. I want you to know that Nancy's books are available at Interrobang Books in Dallas, Barnes & Noble, Albert Whitman and Company, and Lerner Publishing Group. And I also invite you all to explore Nancy's website, nancychurnin.com. And as Denise mentioned, her different websites, and we'll certainly get those up in terms of our credits to be sure everyone's aware of those. Just as an FYI for Nancy, who had 10 books by the end of 2021, you'll see those on her website. Also information on how to obtain free teacher's guides and project outlines for students, along with scheduling Nancy for presentations at schools and libraries. Now, next month, Nancy will present Manji Moves the Mountain, the real-life story of Dashraf Manji, who lived in a poor village in India and spent 22 years using only a chisel and a hammer to cut a road 360 feet long, 30 feet high, and 25 feet wide through a mountain that blocked his village from a school for the children, hospital for the sick, and markets for the elderly.
Wow.
I welcome you and cannot wait for also next month's segment as well. I encourage each of you to go to our Air for Arts website, airforarts.org. That's AIR, the number 4, arts, ARTS.org, for details about upcoming Storytime presentations. And as Nancy mentioned, and David also said, I'm going to say, we have very special treat to be as we close this dynamic story time. Thank you.
Oh, beautiful, for spacious skies, for amber waves of grain, for purple mountains, majesty above the fruited plains. America, America, God shed his grace on thee and crown thy good with brotherhood from sea to shining sea. Oh, beautiful for pilgrim feet whose stern impassioned stress a thoroughfare for freedom beat across the wilderness. America, America, God mend thine every flaw, confirm thy soul in self-control, thy liberty in law. Oh, beautiful for heroes proved in liberating strife, who more than self their country loved, and mercy more than life. America, America, may God thy gold refine till all success be nobleness and every gain divine. Oh, beautiful for patriot dream that sees beyond the years. Thine alabaster cities gleam, undimmed by human tears. America, America, God shed his grace on thee and crown thy good with brotherhood from sea to shining sea.